He's done it again. Denzel Curry's done it again and dropped another great album with Melt My Eyes, See Your Future. With this project, we can literally start at the title. The title, Melt My Eyes, See Your Future, is basically just a way to think bigger. Now, to expand on that, melt my eyes. You want to basically block your eyes off from whatever's in front of you. You want to essentially eliminate one of your senses. And whenever you think about that, you can think about it in like cartoons or anime where there's a fighter they're blind. And by being blind, they're able to heighten all their other senses. And through heightening all their other senses, they have more awareness. And that awareness allows them to, one, be a better fighter, but also have an entirely different outlook on life. And that's what I think Denzel's gone through with the process of this album. With this album, he's melted his eyes away. He's basically taken everything that he's seen in front of him and eliminated it. And in doing so, has essentially found a place of Zen. And that's something that's really, noticeable throughout this project. Because prior to this, with Zoo and Taboo, and even on Unlocked to an extent, Denzel was and is known for his more aggressive delivery and heavy-hitting beats. But here, we get something that's a lot more mellow, for lack of a better term. It's less yelling at you necessarily, and more like just calculating his rhymes. He's worked it all out so strategically. And on top of that, we're getting production that's, again, a bit of a departure from what we may have expected. With the production, we're getting more boom bap sort of sounds or soul beats and like actual instrumentation, stuff that, again, isn't really expected of Denzel. When I did the lyric breakdowns for the 3 singles that came out, Walkin', Zatoichi, and Troubles, I mentioned that I feel this album was going to be very much a pandemic album in the sense that it would have a lot of references and commentary about what was going on during the pandemic. And it does. But what I also mentioned was it's kind of a outlook on the world, not necessarily just in that pandemic. During the pandemic, in the States at least, there was a whole lot of other things to deal with outside of the virus. So, there's a lot of issues. And when those issues are being so publicized and just in our face all the time, it's very easy to be like, what do we do? Like, the world's just kind of fucked. We need to start over sort of vibes. And that's kind of what I got from those singles at first. But listening through the rest of the project, you start to see that, yes, these are things that are happening, but there are changes that can be made. And I mean, we heard that mostly on Zatoichi, where he wants to essentially bring everyone back together and like help change things. But also throughout the project, we get a lot of commentary about stuff that was happening during the pandemic. I mean, we've seen and heard of a lot of black people, especially, being killed for no good reason. I mean, there was even a mention of a black man getting killed while jogging, which we all kind of know about already. Like, he's not one to shy away from bringing up these political issues, which actually it's not even political. It's just, don't kill people because they're different than you. And in the end, we're not that different. Like, relax. Like, it's not. But aside from that, we have a lot of mentions about what's going on in the world. And with all those mentions of what's going on in the world and such, Denzel, relates it to what we've seen in 2020 and 2021. There's just a lot of bullshit, for lack of a better term. Like, this just so much stuff happening that doesn't need to happen. And it's probably just happening because everything's so disproportionate. Now, getting into the music itself, this album is, like I said, a departure. But a departure in the best way possible. Like I kind of alluded to, Denzel is a lot more focused and everything's more calculated. Like all the lyrics, all the the production, everything lines up just so well. He's gone from this more aggressive and brash sort of delivery to something that's way more calculated. And I mean, with Walken, I remember a lot of people were saying that, oh yeah, I can see the Lupe Fiasco influence. And after thinking about it for a while, you do get a lot of that throughout this project. Everything's like you get the surface level bars, but then when you start to really look at it and think about it, you have the whole concept and you can pull a lot more from it. I'm not going to say I know everything about it because the album came out only like 4 or 5 days ago. So I've only had that time to sit with it. But there's definitely a lot to it. I'm sure a lot of people are also going to be comparing this to Kendrick's To Pimp a Butterfly, strictly based off of Sonics. I don't think they're going to really base it off of anything else because that album was way more focused on the Black experience and just empowerment. Whereas this one, yes, we do get moments of that, but not to that same extent. Here, those moments are more of let's, come together, and like bring up all these issues. We do get a little bit out of Kendrick, but that's not my point. Like, I'm not trying to compare those two albums. This is definitely one of Denzel's most focused and coherent projects as well. And that's not to say that previous works like Taboo were all over the place, but here it's not a very long project. It's 14, 15 tracks at 45 minutes. So it's going to hold your attention. But even beyond that, there are moments where I don't even realize that we've gone to the next song or that the album's over. The album just flows so incredibly well that you can really just have it on all the time. And you'll just keep picking up on new things as you listen to it. Another thing to bring up, especially with like the flow of the album and how it sounds, is the transitions are incredibly smooth, especially between the songs that we got as singles. When we start off with the Melt sessions, it flows so well into Walkin', and then Walkin' going to Worst Comes to Worst is okay, but it's still a smooth transition. Same thing with Mental, that spoken word piece at the end, and just goes really well into Troubles because you get that little bit of the like a crossfade coming in a little bit, and then going from Troubles to Ain't No Way, which I'm gonna get to Ain't No Way in a second, but that song's insane. We get the same sort of thing with the last handful of songs, starting from, you could even say Angels, but I would say more from The Smell of Death all the way through The Ills. All those songs are so similar in sound, but they're still different. And I guess it also helps that The Smell of Death and Sanjuro are both fairly short at 1:22 and 2 minutes 8 seconds respectively. Like, those flow well into each other. And then same thing as with Mentals to Troubles, Sanjuro to Zatoichi is just a smooth transition. Another thing to bring up while I'm talking about Zatoichi is, at first I didn't really care for it as much. I did enjoy it, but it felt weird given that we had Walkin' first. But in the context of the album, it makes perfect sense. And that leading into The Ills is even better. The Ills is such a great closer to the album because we get essentially a conclusion. Like, Denzel hasn't really done that sort of idea, I feel. Like, on that track, he's mentioning how or who he's influenced by and how they've influenced him and how he's just kind of pulled from all those influences. Going back, though, Ain't No Way is insane. I was listening to the Bootleg Kev podcast with him on it, and he mentioned that originally this was going to be Rico Nasty's song, which would have been perfect for her because she kicks it off so aggressively and so well. And if you're one of those people that was at the Playboy Cardi shows booing Rico, you can go fuck yourself. Like, she deserves so much more than that. But she kicks it off so well. And then, like, when I saw the features on it, I was like, that's kind of weird. I don't know how Black is going to fit in with these guys because, Rico, Denzel, and Jid, I could see them working together. Jid may be a bit of an outlier as well, but then it all just works perfectly. Also, there's that Run the Jewels reference, which everyone's going crazy about. Aside from that, we've been getting some of the best choruses and hooks from Denzel that I've heard on anything. And this is more in a way of, like, it's just a smooth chorus. And, Denzel's always been good with choruses. I mean, look at Ultimate, look at Clout Cobain, look at Ricky. Like, those are all songs that he's done really well in terms of, like, the verses and the chorus. Like, it's just a great song overall. But then you have tracks on this, like X-Wing, and it's just like, you wouldn't expect it to be so sing-songy and just hard still. It's just so good. The other track, I think it was, the other track, Worst Comes to Worst, and John Wayne, like, those are both some of my favorite choruses as well on this project. And speaking of John Wayne, produced by JPEG Mafia, and I'm not gonna lie, I could tell immediately that it was a JPEG Mafia beat, because no one else does shit like that. Like, this album is just so good overall, and although I didn't talk about too much what it means, it's going to be one of those albums that people are going to go back to often and be like, oh, this is what's going on with this is what's going on with this track. Like, this is the whole concept. I mean, overall, I do think the concept is that he's basically gotten rid of his eyes, gotten rid of what's right in front of him, just so that he can expand his mind and see more, just like in anime when, someone's blind and they're just a dope fighter. Which also makes sense because Denzel is really into anime and Japanese movies. So, I mean, hell, Zatoichi is the blind swordsman. Like, it makes perfect sense to have that track and that title on this album. But man, this album has been on repeat. It's just such a good project, and I don't know, I just can't say enough good things about it. I know I could easily just go through and talk about every single song, but I'm not going to do that because y'all don't need to hear me talk about an album for 3 hours, because I totally will. But if you want to see that, let me know. I honestly can't even list what my favorite songs on this album are because it's constantly changing. There's just so many good tracks, and I don't think there's anything that's bad on this album. Like, nothing really seems out of place. Nothing seems like, oh, you should have taken that out. They're all dope songs. I will say, though, that my favorite song is Ain't No Way, just because of how hard it is. But a really good one that a lot of people might just kind of skip over is Sanjuro, because the way he comes in is very reminiscent of Tech 9 when he did Stamina. He comes in just super hard and then stops. But also 454, great verse. But that's where I'm going to leave it at for now with this review, because I have rambled on for way too long. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this album and what your favorite tracks are. And also let me know if you want a breakdown of any of the other tracks, because I will love to spend time or more time with this album. It's so good. Also, while you're down there, like and subscribe if you want to see more reviews and ramblings like this. Thank you for watching, and please stay safe out there.